Before anything changes in your outer world, something profound must shift within you. Most people are waiting for money to arrive, for success to appear, for life to finally give them a reason to feel abundant. But abundance does not begin out there. It begins in the quiet, invisible space of your own awareness. It begins the moment you decide to feel whole, even when nothing around you has changed yet. Right now, in this very moment, you can pause and notice what is already here. Your breath is moving effortlessly. Your heart is beating without your command. Life itself is flowing through you, sustaining you, supporting you in ways you rarely stop to appreciate. This is abundance, not something distant or reserved for future version of yourself, but something that is already unfolding within you. The mind has been conditioned to measure abundance through comparison, more money, more possessions, more recognition. But the deeper truth is that abundance is a state of being. It is a frequency you embody, and when you begin to feel it internally without needing proof, you send a powerful message to life. I am ready. I am open. I am already aligned. Think about how differently you would walk, speak, and make decisions if you truly felt abundant right now. There would be no desperation in your energy, no grasping, no fear of missing out. Instead, there would be a calm confidence, a quiet knowing that everything you need is either already present or gently making its way toward you. This feeling cannot be faked on the surface. It must be cultivated from within, and it begins with something very simple: gratitude, not as a forced practice, but as a genuine recognition of what is already here. When you shift your attention to even the smallest blessings, a kind word, a moment of peace, a simple opportunity, you begin to rewire your perception. The mind starts to notice more of what is working, more of what is flowing, more of what is flowing, more of what is abundant. And as this awareness grows, so does your emotional state. You begin to feel lighter, more open, more receptive. You stop resisting life and start allowing it. And in that allowing, something magical happens. Life begins to reflect that same openness back to you. Understand this clearly: your emotions are not just reactions, they are signals. They communicate with the deeper intelligence of the universe. When you feel lack, you reinforce separation. When you feel abundance, you invite expansion. So the practice is not to wait for evidence, but to become the evidence. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that everything you have ever desired is already yours. Not someday, not in the future, but now. Feel the relief in your body. Feel the ease in your breath. Feel the quiet joy that comes when there is nothing missing. Let that feeling settle into you as if it belongs there, because it does. The more often you return to this state, the more familiar it becomes, and eventually it becomes your natural way of being. You no longer need external validation to feel complete because you have touched that completeness within yourself. From this place, your actions change. You begin to move through life with intention rather than reaction. You choose from a place of fullness rather than fear, and these choices, subtle as they may seem, begin to shape a new reality around you. Abundance is not something you chase, it is something you allow. And allowing begins when you stop withholding the feeling of abundance from yourself. When you stop saying, I will feel this when, and instead say, I feel this now. Because the truth is, the moment you feel abundant, you already are. There is a subtle habit of the mind that quietly shapes the course of your entire life, and that habit is where you choose to place your attention. Most people, without even realizing it, are constantly scanning their reality for what is missing. They notice what hasn't happened yet, what isn't working, what they don't have enough of. And the more they look for lack, the more visible it becomes until it feels like a permanent condition rather than a passing perception. But the truth is, what you see is not all that exists. It is simply what you have trained yourself to notice. And this means something incredibly powerful. You can retrain your mind to see differently. In this very moment, there are countless possibilities surrounding you, opportunities you haven't yet explored, connections waiting to be made, ideas quietly forming beneath the surface of your awareness. Life is not static. It is constantly unfolding, expanding, evolving. But if your attention remains fixed on what is absent, you close yourself off from what is trying to emerge. Shifting from lack to possibility is not about denying challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It is about expanding your awareness beyond limitation. It is about recognizing that what you are experiencing right now is only one version of reality, not the final truth. Imagine standing in a room with a single window, convinced that what you see through it is all that exists. But the moment you turn your head, you realize there are many more windows, each offering a different view. Possibility works in the same way. The more you allow yourself to look beyond the narrow frame of lack, the more expansive your world becomes. This shift begins with a simple question: what else is possible here? Not as a desperate plea, but as an open curiosity. When you ask this question silly, your mind begins to search for nuances. It starts to notice alternatives, creative solutions, unexpected pathways. You move from feeling stuck to feeling open. And with that openness comes a subtle but profound change in your energy. When you focus on lack, your body contracts. There is tension, resistance, a sense of holding on. But when you focus on possibility, there is a sense of expansion. Your breath deepens, your posture shifts, your thoughts become more fluid. You begin to feel as though life is working with you rather than against you. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. When your inner state reflects openness, you become more receptive to what is already trying to reach you. You notice opportunities you might have ignored before. You respond differently to situations that once triggered fear, and these small shifts begin to create new outcomes. Consider how often solutions appear the moment you stop obsessing over the problem. The answer was not created in that instant. It was always there, waiting for your awareness to expand enough to perceive it. This is the nature of possibility. It does not force itself into your awareness. It reveals itself when you are ready to see it. Gratitude plays a powerful role in this shift. When you consciously acknowledge what is already present in your life, you interrupt the pattern of lack. The you remind yourself that there is more working for you than against you. And from that recognition, your perspective begins to change. You start to see that even your challenges carry hidden opportunities. What once felt like an opportunities, what once felt like an aptitude begins to look like a doorway. What once felt like an ending begins to reveal itself as a beginning. This does not mean everything becomes easy, but it does mean everything becomes meaningful. And meaning transforms your experience. It replaces frustrations with curiosity, fear with exploration, doubt with trust. You begin to engage with life in a completely different way, not as someone who is lacking, but as someone who is discovering. This is where true empowerment lies, not in controlling every outcome, but in choosing how you perceive what is in front of you. because perception shapes experience and experience shapes reality. So each time you catch yourself focusing on what is missing, gently shift your attention. Look again. Ask yourself what is present, what is possible, what is trying to unfold. Train your mind to recognize potential instead of limitation, expansion instead of contraction. Over time, this becomes more than a practice. It becomes your natural state. You begin to expect possibility. You begin to trust that life is always offering something, even when it is not immediately visible. And in that trust, you find a sense of ease that cannot be shaken by temporary circumstances. Because the moment you shift your focus, you shift your reality. And where your attention goes, your life begins to grow. Every choice you make carries an energy behind it, and that energy quietly shapes the direction of your life. Most decisions are not made from clarity, but from conditioning, from fear, from doubt, from the subtle belief that there is not enough. And when you choose from that space, even the right decision can lead to a feeling of struggle because it is rooted in limitation. But there is another way to move through life, a way that transforms not just what you choose, but how you experience the outcome of those choices. It begins with a simple inner shift, asking yourself in any moment of decision, what would I choose if I already had everything? Pause and feel the difference in that question. When you believe something is missing, your mind begins to calculate. It weighs risks, anticipates loss, anticipates. Yes, to protect you from disappointment, there is hesitation, contraction, a sense of holding back. But when you imagine that nothing is lacking, something within you relaxes. The urgency dissolves, the fear softens, and in that space, a deeper intelligence begins to guide you. This is the intelligence that is not driven by survival, but by alignment. It does not ask what is the safest option, but rather what feels true. It is subtle, often quiet, but incredibly powerful. And when you begin to trust it, your decisions start to reflect a sense of wholeness rather than need to fill a void. Think about how differently you would approach your life if you were not trying to prove anything, fix anything, or secure your worth. If you already felt complete, what would you say yes to? What would you release? What would you stop tolerating? These questions are not meant to create pressure, but awareness. Because often the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not a lack of opportunity, but a pattern of decisions rooted in fear. And the moment you shift the energy behind your choices, you begin to close that gap naturally. Making decisions from a place of plenty does not mean ignoring practical considerations. It means that your inner state is not defined by them. You can still plan, evaluate, and think logically, but the foundation is different. Instead of fear driving the process, there is a sense of trust. Instead of scarcity shaping your options, there is a recognition of possibility. You begin to notice that when you choose from abundance, there is less resistance in your experience. Things may not always go exactly as expected, but there is a flow, a sense that life is responding to you in a supportive way. And even when challenges arise, you meet them with a different energy, not as obstacles to fear, but as situations to navigate with confide. And say, this shift also changes your relationship with risk. When you are rooted in lack, risk feels dangerous, something to avoid at all costs. But when you are rooted in abundance, risk becomes an expression of growth. It is no longer about what you might lose, but about what you might discover. You start to trust that you can handle whatever unfolds because your sense of security is not tied to a specific outcome. It comes from within. And this inner stability allows you to take actions that align with your highest vision rather than settling for what feels safe but limiting. There is also a profound sense of freedom in this way of living. You are no longer trapped in cycles of overthinking or second guessing. You make a choice and you stand in it fully. You are present with it, engaged with it, and open to where it leads. This presence itself becomes a source of clarity because you are no longer divided within yourself. And as you continue to choose from this place, something remarkable begins to happen. Your external reality starts to reflect your internal state. Opportunities that align with your energy begin to appear. People who resonate with your clarity and confidence are drawn into your life. Situations that once felt complicated begin to resolve with greater ease. This is not because you are controlling life, but because you are cooperating with it. You are no longer acting from place of resistance, but from a place of harmony. And in that harmony, there is a natural unfolding that does not need to be forced. Understand that this is a practice. There will be moments when fear returns, when old patterns resurface, when the mind tries to pull you back into scarcity. But each time you become aware of it, you have a choice. You can pause, reconnect, and ask yourself again, what would I choose if I already had everything? And in that moment, you like you return to a state of openness, of trust, of quiet confidence. You remember that abundance is not something you are trying to reach. It is something you are choosing to embody. Because the quality of your life is not determined by the circumstances you face, but by the consciousness from which you choose. There is a quiet conversation happening within you at all times, a constant stream of words and meanings that shape how you see yourself and the world around you. Most of it goes unnoticed, yet it carries immense power. The language you use, both spoken and unspoken, is not merely a reflection of your reality, it is a force that helps create it. Notice how often your words are shaped by limitation. Simple phrases like, I can't, I don't have enough, or this never works for me, may seem harmless, almost automatic. But each time they are spoken or even thought, they send a signal deep into your subconscious, reinforcing a pattern. Over time, these patterns become beliefs, and those beliefs begin to define what you expect from life. And life, in its mysterious way, responds to those expectations. This is why the language you choose matters so deeply. It is not about forcing positivity or denying what you feel, but about becoming aware of the subtle ways you may be anchoring yourself to scarcity. When you speak from lack, you align your energy with contraction. You close doors before they even have a chance to open. But the moment you shift your language, even slightly, something begins to change within you. Instead of saying, I can't afford this, you might say, I am learning how to create the resources for this. Feel the difference. The first statement ends the conversation. It creates a boundary that feels final. The second keeps the door open. It invites possibility, growth, and movement. Language is not just communication, it is intention in motion. That when you begin to speak the language of abundance, you are not pretending that everything is perfect. You are choosing to align your words with expansion rather than limitation. You are reminding yourself that your current circumstances are not fixed, that there is always a path forward, even if you cannot yet see it clearly. This shift also changes the way you relate to challenges. Instead of saying, "This is too difficult," you might say, "This is too difficult." You might say, and in that moment, the experience itself begins to transform. What once felt heavy starts to feel meaningful. What once felt overwhelming becomes something you can engage with more consciously. Your words influence not only your thoughts but your emotions, and your emotions influence your actions. So, when you change the language at the root, you begin to change the entire chain of experience. There is also something even more subtle happening beneath the surface. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is repeatedly suggested. It absorbs the language you use and begins to organize your perception accordingly. If you consistently speak in terms of limitation, your mind will filter reality to confirm those limitations. But if you begin to speak in terms of abundance, it will start to look for evidence of that instead. This is how you begin to reprogram your inner world, not through force, but through consistency. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. You might notice resistance, a sense that your new language does not yet feel true, and that is natural. You are stepping beyond old patterns that have been reinforced over time. But if you remain patient and gentle with yourself, the shift will begin to settle. You can start with small moments. When something does not go as planned, instead of immediately reacting with frustration, pause. Choose your words consciously. Pause. Choose your words consciously. Speak to yourself in a way that reflects trust rather than doubt. Even a simple shift like saying, "I am finding my way through this," can begin to create a different internal experience. And as this practice deepens, it extends beyond your inner dialogue into your interactions with others. The way you speak to people, the energy behind your words, begins to carry a sense of openness and possibility. You uplift rather than diminish, encourage rather than limit. And this not only changes your own state, but also influences the energy of those around you. You become someone who speaks life into situations, who sees beyond surface appearances, who holds space for what can be rather than what currently is. And in doing so, you naturally attract more experiences that reflect that same frequency. Understand that this is not about controlling every word you say, but about cultivating every word you say, but about cultivating awareness. It is about noticing when your language is rooted in fear and gently guiding it back toward trust. It is about recognizing that every word is a choice and every choice carries energy. Over time, this awareness becomes effortless. You begin to speak from a place of alignment without needing to think about it. Your words flow from a deeper understanding, one that knows abundance is not something to chase, but something to express. And as you continue to speak in this way, your reality begins to echo your language. Opportunities feel more accessible, solutions more visible, life more responsive, not because something outside of you has suddenly changed, but because you have changed the way you relate to it. Because the words you choose are not just describing your life, they are shaping it. There is a natural rhythm to life, a quiet circulation that moves through everything, through nature, through relationships, through your own experience. Nothing in existence is meant to be held onto tightly or locked away. The breath itself teaches you this truth. You inhale, you receive, and then you exhale, you release. If you were to only inhale and never let go, even something as life giving as breath would become suffocating. Abundance follows this same principle. It is not a static possession, but a dynamic flow. And the moment you begin to understand this, your relationship with giving and receiving begins to transform. Many people approach life with a subtle fear of losing what they have. They hold back their time, their energy, their kindness, even their appreciation, believing that if they give too much, there will not be enough left for them. But this belief quietly interrupts the flow. It creates a sense of stagnation where life no longer moves freely through them. What if, instead, you began to see giving not as a loss, but as an expansion? When you give from a place of fullness, not obligation, not expectation, but genuine openness, you are affirming to yourself that you already have enough. You are shifting your identity from someone who lacks to someone who overflows, and that shift carries a powerful energy. This does not mean giving in a way that depletes you. It is not about sacrifice or self neglect. True giving arises naturally when you are connected to your own sense of abundance. It feels effortless, even joyful. It could be something as simple as offering your attention to someone who needs to be heard, sharing a kind word, or extending your support without needing recognition in return. In those moments, notice how you feel. There is a lightness, a sense of connection, a quiet fulfillment that cannot be measured in material terms. That feeling itself is a form of abundance. And the more you allow yourself to experience it, the more it becomes a part of who you are. There is also a deeper intelligence at work here, one that operates beyond logical calculation. When you give freely, you participate in the natural flow of life, and life in turn responds, not always in predictable ways, not always immediately, but with a kind of harmony that begins to unfold over time. You may find that opportunities arise unexpectedly, that support comes from places you did not anticipate, that your needs are met in ways that feel almost effortless. This is not coincidence. It is the result of alignment. You are no longer resisting the flow, you are part of it. At the same time, it is important to release the need for a specific return. The moment giving becomes transactional, I will give so that I can receive, the energy shifts. It becomes constrained, conditional, and that condition limits the natural movement of abundance. Instead, give with trust. Trust that what you offer is not lost but transformed. Trust that in some way, at some time, the energy you put into the world will return to you, often in forms you could not have predicted. This trust is what allows you to remain open even when there is uncertainty. It frees you from the need to control outcomes and allows you to engage with life more fully. You begin to experience giving not as a strategy, but as an expression of who you are. There is also something deeply connecting about this practice. When you give, you dissolve the illusion of separation. You recognize that you are not isolated, but part of a greater whole. And in that recognition, there is a sense of unity that brings its own kind of richness. You begin to see that abundance is not just about what you accumulate, but about how you relate to yourself, to others, to life itself. It is reflected in your generosity of spirit, your willingness to share, your openness to contribute. And as this becomes your way of being, you no longer measure your worth by what you hold on to, but by what flows through you. You become a channel rather than a container, allowing life to move freely, creatively, expansively. This is where true freedom lies, not in having everything, but in knowing that you are always connected to the source of everything. And from that connection, there is no fear of loss because you trust in the continuity of the flow. So give when your heart feels open. Offer what you can in whatever form feels natural. Let it be simple, let it be sincere, let it be without condition. Because the more you allow abundance to flow through you, the more it finds its way back to you. There is a quiet creative power within you that is constantly shaping your experience, whether you are aware of it or not. Every image you hold in your mind, every scenario you replay, every expectation you carry, these are not idle thoughts. They are impressions that gently guide your perception, your emotions, and ultimately your reality. And when you begin to use this power consciously, something extraordinary begins to. Most people imagine their future from a place of limitation. They visualize what they want, but beneath that vision is doubt, uncertainty, or a subtle feeling that it may never truly happen. And so the image remains distant, like something separate from who they are. But true visualization is not about wishing, it is about embodying. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your life exactly as you desire it to be. Not as a fantasy you visit briefly, but as a reality you step into fully. See the details, notice where you are, how you move, how you speak, how you feel in that life. Allow it to become vivid, almost tangible. But more important than what you see is what you feel. Feel the ease in your body as if nothing is missing. Feel the quiet confidence that comes when you are no longer chasing, but simply living in alignment. Feel the gratitude, not for something that might happen, but for something that is already here. Let that feeling expand within you until it becomes familiar, until it feels natural. This is where the shift begins. Your mind does not operate only on logic, it responds deeply to imagery and emotion. When you repeatedly immerse yourself in a state where your desired reality feels real, your brain begins to accept it as a possibility, then as a probability, and eventually as something expected. And once something becomes expected, your behavior begins to align with it. You start to notice subtle changes in how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts, your tone becomes more assured. Some make decisions with greater clarity. These changes may seem small, but they are significant because they influence how you interact with the world and how the world responds to you. Visualization is not about escaping your current reality, it is about expanding it. It allows you to step beyond the limitations of your present circumstances and connect with a version of yourself that already exists as potential. And the more often you connect with that version, the more you begin to embody it. There is also a powerful relationship between imagination and belief. If you can see something clearly in your mind and feel it deeply in your body, you begin to dissolve the resistance that once kept it at a distance. What once felt impossible begins to feel attainable, and what once felt distant begins to feel close. This is not because you are forcing reality to change, but because you are changing your relationship to it. And as that relationship shifts, you become more receptive to the opportunities, ideas, and connections that align with your vision. You may find yourself drawn to new paths, inspired to take actions you once hesitated to take, or guided toward people and experiences that support your growth. It is important, however, to approach this practice with a sense of ease rather than urgency. Visualization is not something you do in order to make something happen. It is something you do to align yourself with what is already possible. There is no need to strain or push. Simply return to the feeling again and again with patience and trust. You may also notice that your vision evolves over time. As you grow, your desires become clearer, more refined. Allow this to happen naturally. The goal is not to fix a rigid image, but to remain connected to the feeling of expansion, of possibility, of abundance. And even when your external world does not immediately reflect your inner vision, remain steady. Do not measure your progress solely by visible results. The deeper transformation is happening within you in the way you think, feel, and respond to life. And that inner shift is what eventually shapes the outer experience. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you trust this process. You no longer feel the need to chase or control every outcome because you know that you are aligned with something greater than momentary circumstances. You begin to move through life with a sense of calm expectation, as if what you desire is not a question of if, but simply a matter of when. And in that state, there is a profound sense of peace. You are no longer divided between where you are and where you want to be. You are connected to both, grounded in the present while open to the future. So return to your vision often. Let it be clear. Let it be vivid. Let it be vivid. Let it be felt, not as something separate from you, but as an extension of who you are becoming. Because the more real it becomes within you, the more naturally it begins to take form around you. And what you consistently see and feel within, you gently invite into your life.